Hello, I'm Ronan Scott. Welcome to Take Your Points, the GA show. In this week's programme, we've got Gerard O'Kane, Naomh Eanna, Cahal Carvill, and we're going to be talking to James McAuley about St Enda's season. So our first discussion today was about Gerard O'Kane's column last week when you wrote about you weren't happy, or you wanted to see a more coverage of the final day of the National League. You wish you could have a Sky Sports style end to the season where it was all high drama. Why did you come up with that, or why?
I just felt maybe between the GA and RTE, maybe between the two of them, maybe missed a trick in that whenever we got to the last day of the league this year, out of the top 3 divisions, there was 22 out of the 24 teams still had something to play for, bar Dublin and Armagh was the only 2 teams who couldn't go up or couldn't go down. So the other 22 teams had either promotion or relegation in their mind. Getting to the last day of the league, you're getting to game 7. Teams are usually at a stage where they're getting close enough to championship pitch, you know. So with all the games, with everything riding on them, I just felt that the coverage on them was lacking a little bit. I know RTE had a segment on the radio where they obviously had people in the studio and they were cutting to games back and forward, but I even felt that the choice of games they were cutting to weren't the ones that were the cut and thrust, where teams were tit for tat, point for point, and that one score ultimately maybe kept down out of Division 2, not even score difference, it was points scored or something like that. Whereas down were playing Louth, Offaly were playing Sligo, all them games were down to 1-point games, they were draws where teams could go up or down. You had Cork at the Athletic Grounds thinking a 1 might have kept them up, only Clare then suddenly pipped Tipperary at the end. And I just felt that if RTE had some sort of show on the run up from 2 o'clock to 3:30, now obviously Sky Sports are working with a massive production budget and that sort of atmosphere, but even something that where you have studio analysts in a panel in a studio and they're watching the games there and then, and you can get the coverage there and then right through your TV, as opposed to sitting on Twitter, listening to RTE radio and checking latest scores on the internet.
In theory, couldn't agree more. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I don't think it would just have to be for the last week too. I think the league is perfect. You're having 16 games in the football, and obviously hurling as well on top of that every week, and there's always going to be a twists and turns. It's brilliant. Something I always wondered actually, I've been on to RT and just finding out just why, and a lot of it is just to do with, as you say, production budgets and things like that, and you know, the infrastructure at GA grounds for getting live feeds out. You know, Croke Park is very well set up, but I think once you go past Croke Park, it's they really struggle in terms of broadband connections, things like that guarantee. So I think RT would be open to that if they are able to, but I think at the moment there's a lot of barriers in it. But it will be something that would be fantastic if we get round. It's funny what you were saying there. It's just even you were saying there, even if they had a show on maybe 2 to 5, and maybe you don't need the pundits to be watching the screen if these barriers are in place. Maybe if you had 3 or 4 boys on a couch and you had people feeding them information, they could discuss the twists and turns. That's a totally different concept there. What, you know, in terms of you don't actually need to be watching it, like they could be getting the same sort of updates as you get in the radio. I tune into that. And you know, the championship doesn't lend itself to that format unless there's a lot of qualifier games on, but the league's absolutely perfect for it.
It was funny that it wasn't so long ago where people said we shouldn't be televising so many games because it stops people from going to the matches. They want them to go to the matches, but I think in this current day and age with the digital era we live in, people want immediate information. They want it all the time, and you know.
With Twitter, you're not going to stop people. You're not going to put a blanket ban on someone by not showing on TV. If someone doesn't want to go to the game, they're going to sit and look on their Twitter and probably be happy enough. I don't think it being on TV or off TV is going to be the deciding factor whether to go to the Armagh match or the Derry match or whatever. So I think, as you say, that digital age has completely changed that that sort of perspective on things. If you want the scores, you're going to get them. You don't have to go out to get them. And the same thing, like, Armagh fans are going to go to Armagh matches, you know, it doesn't matter. You get on the radio to and fro the match, Derry fans the same, whatever, you know. People want to go to see football. If they don't want to go see football, they're not going to change their mind. Something like that's probably not going to have too much of an impact.
It's a dramatic show, isn't it? Like, it's that because you get it on the radio, don't you?
I was listening to RT radio that day. I was trying to follow up my Twitter at the same time, and it sounds exciting coming through the radio. Now I can just imagine it on the TV screen the way you see it in Soccer Saturday. You have the fellas, there's maybe 4 or 5 of them sitting around and they're giving updates there and then right away. And what, you know, some of them might talk nonsense in terms of what Phil Thompson's talking or Charlie Nicholas are at, but if you have 3 or 4 people in the studio getting that information fed to them. If RTE was showing something that covered all 16 games, where everything was at stake, I think that they would definitely get viewers from it.
So Cahal, what side do you fall down on this one?
Well, ultimately, I think the key thing is promotion, no matter in what form or guise. At the end of the day, we have to look at it. The GAA is in competition with other sports, the likes of rugby, the likes of golf, the likes of soccer, etc., to try and get the interest of the young people, to try and keep the people engaged. And the more GAA, be it Gaelic football, be it hurling on TV, whether it's on a league format for the RTE on a Sunday, whether it's BBC in terms of a club championship, but I certainly do think that on you have in the BBC, Mark Sidebottom doing like a final score for that at the end of the league, where you don't even have to have the infrastructure at the games. If you're getting live updates with the guys in the headsets on this is what's going on in the athletic grounds, Cork need to win to stay up, and Clare have just scored, which is putting Cork into Division 3 for the first time in a number of years. Something like that would be exciting. It would get people involved, and it goes back to the point of promoting your sport. I think the likes of rugby, even if it is mightn't be the most exciting game, they do promote it and package it well, and I think that's somewhere where the GAA, and in terms of especially the league, because I think the way the league is tiered, it leads to more competitive games, it leads to more interaction from the fans, you have more options there, and ultimately the more GAA we get on TV, I think it's or at the games and around the grounds, it can only be a positive, especially for people in Ulster.
Yeah. Do you want to just give us a hint into what you're talking about this week in the next issue of Gaelic Life?
Yeah, well, I think this issue will be an interesting one and potentially could be quite controversial, but I've taken a look into and a deep dive into the Gaelic Players Association, essentially from where it was back in 1999 when it was incepted, and the guys that were involved back then, Fergal Logan to the Joe Brawleys and all of those guys that actually set it up, and where it is now in 2019, 20 years on, were those, the founding principles, where it was about player welfare and promoting the dedication that the players actually give to the game, to now, I think potentially when you're having $500 plates in America to raise funds for the GPA, is that going away from actually the founding principles of it? And do they actually need to get back to I know they do a lot of good stuff with mental health and all of that there, but to my mind there's so much commitment and so much of a drive towards professionalism within the GAA at present. Sometimes players are maybe missing their own lives and their own careers and putting their GAA careers ahead of their actual day-to-day careers, ahead of their education, etc., etc. And maybe it's something that the GPA this year, given the 20 years from its inception, may want to look at what is important with young players these days and re-evaluating its core principles again. So I want to look into that there, and I think it'll spark a debate if nothing else.
Okay. What's your thoughts on the GPA, Gerard? You've been involved?
Yes, I was a member of the GPA the whole time that they were in Derry. I followed then, Paddy Bradley would have been our GPA rep. Once he sort of left the panel, sort of suddenly then I was sort of thrown into it, because me and Paddy were right close, I knew him, he said, look, you can do this. So I was thrown into it from that respect. I sort of agree with Cahal in that I don't think that Donegal O'Neill, Anthony Toho, I know Fergal Logan was involved in it, and Fergal McCusker from Derry was definitely involved in it at the time. I don't know they sat up in the Welly Park 20 years ago foreseeing now what the GPA would become now, as opposed to what their initial concept of it was and their initial idea of setting it up. I think when they set it up then, was it probably 2 or 3 years later, Cork went through a couple of bad episodes with player strikes, players not getting access to gyms, players not getting the proper medical provision and that sort of thing. Cork hurlers sort of hit the nuclear button on that quite early in the GPA's career, and I think it maybe gave the players, dare say it, maybe a bit much power that early in the GPA's career. And I don't know that the original people that set it up, I don't think that they envisaged 20 years down the line that the GPA would become well, they are essentially a multi-million-pound organisation now. They have a seat at Croke Park, they have a seat at Congress. They're very heavily involved with a lot of decision making, and obviously, as Cahal alluded to, they do a lot of good work. I've seen from a rep's point of view the good work they do. I've been involved in disseminating information around the Derry panel. There's the courses available to you, there's the options, and I think maybe, dare I say it, maybe the further north we go, the less involved people are in it and the less attractive it seems for players, as opposed to once you get, I suppose, in around Dublin's the capital, that's where business is at, that's where people want to be involved in. But it's unless you're involved in the last 4, the last 8 teams nearly, they seem to benefit a lot more, as opposed to teams who are maybe put out in the first round of the qualifiers. And I would say, if you took a straw poll of the Division 4 final on Saturday past between Derry and Leitrim, how many of those players benefited from the GPA and their structures as opposed to the All-Ireland final last year, I would say you'd be down a fair bit in numbers.
Have you big thoughts on that?
Totally agree with what he's saying there. That's the interesting thing for me. Like, the GPA is sort of turned into a business, and there's a balance there. You know, the money they make goes into a lot of good things, so there's a lot of benefits for players and players seeing like that. I'm more interested in, and as you know, couldn't kick a ball, so I never know what the GPA is about, but the difference between the top level teams and the bottom level teams, what the sort of impact of the GPA is on them. And I've been in a few debates, you know, where online where I've suggested like those trips to America, that how brilliant would it be to bring the Nicky Rackard winners, the Laurie Meagher winners, the Christy Ring winners over on a trip overseas. They'll not get this opportunity to an audience of American people who wouldn't know who Joe Canning is from Cahal Carvill, like, or at you know, a Wicklow Hurler or anything like that. They wouldn't understand the level, so why not? And we know why, because there's a lot of events around it with the Irish community over there, and obviously you want some star attractions. But that's the interesting thing for me, just how does the GPA play with the lower levels, and especially hurling in Ulster, like, you know, that's the big thing. And Cal obviously would have a lot more insight than any of us on this, but the lower level hurling in Ulster, you know, how did you feel the GPA in your career?
Well, it's interesting, and as I said, they have done a lot of good things, and I think and they will probably say that, you know, it's on the onus is on the players to actually, the options are out there to take the benefit of it and to actually go out and seek it out. And in terms of during my career, I did benefit from it in terms of Owen McDermott at the Communication Clinic. We did a number of events and different things to help with public speaking and things like that there, which I thought was very beneficial. But I think out of the Armagh team, and you know, certainly any of the other Ulster players that I spoke to, I think maybe I was one of 2 or 3 players that actually took advantage of it. And you know, whether that's the GPA in terms of how they promote it in the Ulster counties, or whether it's players actually going out and taking advantage of it, you know, there is a balance there. There also is the issue about the commercialisation of it, and obviously they have to make money in order to provide these services, but has it gone too far to that end, that the actual principles that governed it at the start are being lost in the commercialisation of the GPA? So those are some of the issues that I want to take a look at. And you know, there are big points within the GAA generally, and promotion of hurling and of the game in the north is one of those things that I think they should be actually working on and trying to push forward, and trying to up profile of certain players to make it more attractive for the youth to actually come in and say, you know what, I want to play hurling in Fermanagh, or I want to get involved in Donegal, you know. So there's those issues, and I know the GAA are trying to tackle it, but there's the option there for the GPAs also to raise the profile.
Is there not a massive group of players who also need a players association, which is the club players? Like, there's a need for there to be helped out as well?
What numbers are we talking? Like, was it 300,000 in Ulster or something? I just don't know how you become a representative. I really support what they're trying here, and Declan and different ones like that, Northern Cairn and all's involved. Like, I just don't know how you can mandate, you know, the county squads. You know, there's at least a couple of hundred, but when you're going and you're multiplying that by 50, 60 times, I just find it hard that you're ever going to be able to do it on a sort of, I suppose, on the scale of GPA. Now, certainly pushing fixtures and stuff like that, everyone's going to be in the same boat, but when it gets to the nitty-gritty issues where there may be some debate, that's where I just feel the Club Players Association will run into bother, but totally support the you know, establishment of it, and hope to do make some ground. I just think they'll have some difficult days.
So do you think then the issues that the club players face will be dealt with by the GPA anyway? You know, because fixtures is one of the big ones.
No, I don't think, and it's not their responsibility to look for club players. Like, you know, it's very clear, they've made no secret, they're a county team organisation, so they shouldn't. It's up to the GAA to support the club players, and it shouldn't need a club players association, but it's just becoming increasingly clear that the club player is losing its voice. Where the GAA was maybe on a side, it seems to be less so, and again, it's the commercialisation, it's the business side, it's the county game that makes the most money, and there has been a bit, I suppose, fight back in the last few years in this club-only month. We don't really know if it's going to be much of a success. I will see at Armagh at the weekend, pretty much every county player I know of was playing for their club, so that's a start. But in the long run, people are going to get disillusioned unless there is change.
Yeah. Right, thanks very much, lads, for the conversation. The next section, we're going to talk to James McAuley from Naomh Eanna. Thanks for coming in to chat with us. We invited you in to talk about St Enda's season last year, how successful it was, because it was a pretty incredible season. It didn't end the way you hoped, but how do you feel about it now, like with the cold light of day between it and the last game? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, obviously the season was unbelievable, and to get to Croke Park with your own club, it's an unbelievable achievement in itself. So that's sort of the way I've looked at it when thinking back about the match. I think on the day we were definitely beaten by a better team, and I've watched the game back 3 or 4 times myself, and you know it does look that way on TV. And I think we did give a good account of ourselves, and like it's not as if we went out and we didn't show up and we completely bottled the occasion. I think we played the way we usually played, and it just wasn't to be on the day. And when a guy scores 3-7 from playing, Kevin McCarthy, you can't really do anything about that. So sometimes you just have to hold your hands up and say, look, we're beaten by a better team, and that's just the way it was.
What's the happiest memory from the year? What will you look back on and remember the most?
There's so many, even like going back to the day we won the Antrim title, because that was sort of the goal for the season after we got safe in Division 1. It was all geared towards winning Antrim, and that day in Corrigan Park, and it was probably the biggest day in the club's history, and then everything just sort of spiraled out of control from there. And after that, my favourite memory is probably the Ulster semi-final against Taddy Ray, even ahead of the Ulster final, because I think that's the game where we really showed our character, and really we thought, right, we can do this here, because I think we were 2 points down going into added time, and we hit 4 points in the bounce, and it was just unbelievable character by the lads, and I was so proud of them after that.
What do you think the strength is with the group? Like how did you manage to go on that incredible run?
The thing is, like with our team at the minute, we're so young, and we all went to school together. We all came through the underage teams together. A lot of us would have won Ulster under 16 together, and I didn't win minor, but 7 or 8 of that squad that we won last year with, they would have won minor together. And whenever we all came into the senior team at 16, 17, we were in Division 3, and we've moved up to Division 1 now. And bonds get very tight when you're going through all those years together and moving up the leagues and winning stuff together. So I think that was sort of the added extra that made us all stick together and want to push on and achieve things at senior level.
Did playing in Division 1 last year help you?
Yeah, definitely. It was an advantage to us. I think we got a bit of stick about playing intermediate while still being Division 1, but our club had never won an adult football title in its history, so that was something that we wanted to achieve. And I think just the added fit, like you're playing against teams like Corrigan and St John's and Craigan, week in, week out, quality teams week in, week out, and that's only going to bring especially a young team on, and I think it definitely helped us, and it's shown throughout the Antrim, Ulster and All Ireland campaign.
Can you build on it this year?
Yeah, definitely. The first league game there, and we beat Corrigan again, who won the senior championship last year, so I don't think that the way things are looking now, it doesn't look like the lads are for stopping anytime soon, so winning's a good habit, and the longer we can keep that going, the better.
And you had a taste of Antrim county football this year. Like how did you enjoy that? What was the experience like?
Yeah, so I got called into the Antrim panel after the All Ireland final there, and maybe it was a bit unfortunate that by the time myself and Oran Eastwood and Nolan Eagle had got called in, that the league was more or less over. I think Derry, it was going to be a very tough job to catch Derry and Leitrim, but you can look at it both ways. When I look back on it, maybe next year, it might have been good to come in and make your debut with the pressure a little bit off, and you have a bit more freedom to express yourself and play your game. So yeah, obviously it was unfortunate not to be playing in Croke Park that weekend past again with Antrim, but I think it's a team that's definitely building over the next few years, and I have no doubt we'll be competing in Division 3 and maybe Division 2 in the next couple of years.
Are you looking forward to this year's championship?
Yeah, well, that's every kid's dream who plays Gaelic football, is to play an Ulster Championship with their county. So yeah, I'm buzzing for it and just can't wait for it.
That's great. Thanks very much, James.
Thank you, no worries. Thanks for having me.
So welcome back. We've included James into the group now because we're going to have a chat about the last weekend's games. Derry beat Leitrim in the Division 4 final and Donegal beat Meath in a dramatic game. So I wanted to speak to Gerard first just about what he thought of Derry, what he thought of the Division 4 final and how will that help Derry going into the Championship, if at all?
I suppose at the start of the league, Derry's option was to play 7 games, won all 7 and get to the National League final and won it. They'd done that. I was at the match myself and enjoyed it at the time. You were getting 36 scores over 70 minutes, so decent game of football, probably end-to-end stuff. But it wasn't until you watched the game after it, you probably realised where the two teams were really at, wherever you've seen both physically and the pace that Meath and Donegal played at as opposed to Derry and Leitrim. With about 15 minutes to go, Derry went 6 up, and I thought Derry's going to kick on here and won this game by 12, 13 points. They never. I think the St Enda point in the first half was a turning point in that he came through 2-on-1. St Enda took his point, which is fair enough. Emmett Bradley was standing wide open, the ball could have been palmed on the net easy. And I think if he'd have scored that, it would have changed the complexion of the game a bit, because you get one goal like that, knocks the stuffing out of the team, and you readily see the top teams, once they hit you for a goal, they'll hit you for 1-5 inside 5-6 minutes without you even realising it. And I was sort of always expecting Derry to do that, and they never done it. Now, obviously Derry came away, they'll be happy enough, they get the league title wrapped up. That's what they went down to do. In that respect, I was happy enough as a Derry supporter, but I just thought, what would Tyrone have done in that scenario? And again, Tyrone's Derry's next game, it'll be a completely different type of game now. It'll be more dogged, it'll be an Ulster game. We hope that Derry can keep it tight, but I just felt that after watching the first game and then watching the game after it, you could see the pace, the physicality, just the way the game they played was a level up from the game before it. But that's why it is Division 4 and you have to be realistic. Now, I don't think Derry would have went there had the St Enda boys been available the last 2 winters. Derry, I even doubt they would have went to Division 3 because they only got relegated in the last 2 years ago. But it happened. They had 7 of them in the team on Saturday, and it showed and brought that any wee bit of class to the team. It was inevitably them players that brought it. They've been doing it now for 4 or 5 years, so hopefully now that they're there a full year, they can bring it out in the rest of the boys.
James, you must have been an interested observer at the weekend because you will play the winner. Antrim will play the winners of Tyrone and Derry. What do you do whenever you're watching that sort of a game?
Well, obviously, like the Division 4 league finals, would have preferred to have been there myself with Antrim this weekend, but it just wasn't to be. Derry beat us by a point in Belfast and Leitrim beat us by a point away. So I've watched Derry a couple of times this year, and as Gerard said, with the Slough-Needle boys coming back in, and I think especially Brendan Rodgers coming back in this weekend in full back, he really shores up their defence with him and Chrissy McCaig sort of down the spine of the team. I don't think that prelim championship game's a given either, because Ulster Championship game, Derry and Tyrone it'll be a big derby, and as Gerard said, it'll be dogged. I don't think Tyrone will be runaway winners by any account. So we're just sort of we'll prepare for both teams and then take it as it comes when whoever wins the game.
The other game was the Donegal-Meath match now, which was interesting because it was a game of 2 halves. What did you take from it? What was your abiding memory of the game?
I really enjoyed it. I thought bar the last few minutes when Donegal were happy to play a possession, Meath didn't really push out and put too much pressure on it. The sort of last 5-10 minutes, the spectacle aspect of it sort of disappeared, but for an hour I thought it was just real good, sort of old school football almost in a way. Meath's speed in the first half was sensational, they're just cutting through them, which will be a concern for Declan Bonner. Now they ran out of gas, that was very clear in the second half, and Donegal showed their experience, but at the same time you're looking at young Oisín Gallen, who I think got 4 points from play, who I thought was absolutely fantastic, and some of the scores were first rate. The obvious thing there, and just I think as a neutral, I think most fans hope to just stick with that, putting Michael Murphy inside in the second half. He just, it was a third or fourth performance again, just really everything about it. He caught one ball where he's 2 foot above everyone and he's catching at chest level, and you're like, how's he doing this? He's just one of those players you'd pay in to watch, no problem. So Donegal will be very happy obviously with promotion. It didn't look a done deal for much of the campaign, but to finish strongly that night against Armagh in Donegal was probably the turning point for them, because they won a gritty match. It was a physical encounter, the weather was horrendous, They got Michael Murphy back in the field. He kicked 1-2 from play that day, and I think that from that moment they sort of just were a different team compared to the team that had been in Tipperary and lost, and etc. The team that didn't play that well against Meath in the first round and were lucky to win, needed a fortunate goal. I think the fact that Paddy McBrearty wasn't part of the squad, but I think he was warming up before the match and kicking about. Like, as a Donegal fan, seeing him coming back, seeing Michael Murphy when he is inside just looking like a Colossus, seeing young players like O'Donnell and Oisín Gallen coming not from nowhere, like, but they're young players that are blended in very, very quickly and fit in quickly. All of a sudden, Donegal, once again, you're just thinking, right, these boys are back being a contender, because usually when a team drops to Division 2, you sort of forget about them a bit, but all of a sudden it just takes a couple of games and you're right back there, and it's the perfect tonic heading into the Ulster Championship.
What do you think of Donegal, Cahal? Do you think they're strong?
From watching the game, when Michael Murphy's tongue hanging out, you're in trouble. And every time the ball went in, you know, the man is unmarkable at times. There was at one stage in the first half where he used his strength to hold the man off, and he caught the ball in one hand, and the referee for some reason gave it as a free out. But it's not only him. I know he's the leader, he's the inspiration, he's a spiritual leader. There was one stage when Glenswilly won the Donegal Championship. He was their captain. He also sponsored the championship. So in terms of the Mecca in Donegal for football, it is all based around Michael Murphy. And when he's on form, you know, there's very few defenders in the country.
How do you actually stop him when he is on form? How, or is it, can you stop him? Like, you know what, as a you're involved in the game, what can you do there to stop it? Like, because I don't know what you can do with him when he's inside and playing, as you say, with the tongue out, you know, you're in trouble. What can you do?
Well, I think when it gets, and the likes of Meath, but when it gets to the top teams, they are able to frustrate him, and I think he has a free rein when it comes to the Declan Bonners, Donegal, and he can, when he's not on the ball in full forward, he can come out to the middle, but sticking to him is a very, very difficult job. But some of the top man markers in the country, if they just stay with him and that's their job from start to finish, he can be frustrated. But I think with the likes of, if you bring McBrearty back in, Oisín Gallen, you know, Owen Bon Gallagher, those type of boys are adding that extra bit to it. And I think even from watching the game of the weekend, Ryan McHugh still is performing a little bit below the standards he set a couple of years ago. So if you can get him brought up, and then McNeilis and those guys back in, it was good to see Neil McGee in again, coming back for Gidor, and I think that now makes him, he's overtaken Colin McFadden in the top appearances for Donegal. So they've an abundance of riches there, all based around Michael Murphy. But you know, when they come up against the Tyrones and you know, some of the top level teams, it's going to be more difficult than, say, it was towards the end on Saturday.
What do you think, Gerard? What do you think of Donegal?
You were talking there about Michael Murphy himself. I've seen the Ulster final 2 years ago. Patrick Hampsey kicked not too often. I think at man of the match. I've seen Chrissy McCaig handle him in a one-on-one scenario where Chrissy's detail is brief. There's Michael Murphy. You stop him, and Chrissy would be very single-minded in that respect, that he would go out and he would be eating, sleeping that for the weeks before, and I've seen him do it now. But it's different in Croke Park whenever the game's a bit more open, like the way it was on Saturday. He was probably getting a bit more space. Meath probably weren't as defensive as maybe other teams would be against him, but there's no man unstoppable, and I have seen him very well handled over the years in different respects. But in terms of Donegal overall, obviously Tyrone got to the Ireland final last year. Are Tyrone the best team in Ulster? I think it's a toss of a coin between them and Donegal on any given day. I know that Tyrone went to Ballybofey last year and beat them for the first time in so many years, but Donegal have brought through a lot of young players in this last 18 months, and they're still waiting on most of the Gidor contingent to get back up to that pitch of county level as well. And as Cahal alluded to, if you fire in Owen McNeilis into the middle of that somewhere, and it's giving the rest of them a bit more freedom, I think Donegal would, in my view, would be favourites for Ulster at this stage. Now, there's a lot of football to be played between now and the Ulster final, but if someone asked me now to pick an outright winner, I would probably say Donegal.
Okay, so that's the end of the show. Thanks very much for you all coming along. Very interesting, and we'll speak to you again in the next few weeks.
Thank you. Yeah, no worries.